right, welcome everybody to the first Brew Crew Podcast. That is
Did you say Brood
me and
Crew or
Chev.
Brew Crew? Have we figured out our
All
name
right,
yet?
I said Brew Crew, but thanks, Chev. Anyway, yeah, it's me, Julian, and Chev. We're here. This is our first of hopefully a recurring segment where we're just gonna get together and talk about things that are going on in the world of Magic. And today we've got some big news, don't we, Chev?
Right, we do, and we're coming live from our multi-million-dollar studio on the West Coast, or at least I am. I don't know where Julian is. Probably a dumpster somewhere.
I am recording live in a van down by the river.
Classic.
But it's okay because I am cracking a cold one, so we're all good.
Well, what are you drinking tonight, Julian?
Chev, I found this one, and it's called Sour Me Unicorn Farts, and it's a glittered sour ale brewed with a fruity cereal and edible glitter.
Okay.
And I saw it, and I was like, the meme is too strong. And I just took a sip, and it's pretty tasty.
The glitter definitely turns me off a little bit, but I'm interested to see how it is. I might live vicariously through you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to see the glitter in the can itself, so I'm just going to take their word for it, but it tastes good. Shout out DeClaw Brewing Company from Baltimore, Maryland. So shout out them for providing refreshment this evening.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have going on, Jeff?
I've got a Brown's Brewery Joanne, which is one of their signature IPAs. They're doing their.
I am a Browns fan.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Not the not the team, but the
right,
brewery.
The brewery. I recently found out they were doing all kinds of takeout options for the COVID crisis. So I went down with a buddy of mine last week, and we just picked up a ton of cans and growlers and stuff. And so this one has been pretty good so far. Excited to try some of their other stuff. I have their Cherry Raz as well, and that one has definitely lived up to expectations. But yeah, right now it's a nice, clean New England Pale Ale.
That's what we like to hear. So anyway, getting back on topic, we have big news in the Magic world. We are just coming out hot off a ban and restricted announcement on the 1st of June, the year of our Lord 2020. And we have bannings in Standard, Historic, and an official rules change. That's right, in errata. They are changing the actual text on cards. So
and this only comes
get into it.
A week or two after they made the bannings for Brawl and Legacy and Vintage, which seems weird that we split them up by what was it, a week, 2 weeks, but probably not going to get into that.
Yes. And I mean, we'll discuss what exactly happened, but I'm thinking it has to do with the
paper release,
the outrage of the collective Reddit. I think Wizards was hoping that they could avoid this, but
it's been a long time.
There has been enough movement that I think they felt like they had to take action. So anyway, what actually happened? Well, in Standard and Historic, we had 2 cards banned. They're the same 2 cards from each of those formats: Agent of Treachery, Fires of Invention.
Mm-hmm.
Chev, how do you feel about that?
I feel pretty good about that. I mean, I've never been a fan of... I recently only just got back into Standard with, I think, Theros Beyond Death. So being face-to-face with Fires of Invention, that was never a really enticing matchup, particularly with the Jeskai Fires original build. And then with, the Companion mechanic and the Yorion pile, having both Treachery, Agent of Treachery, and Fires, it was just a terribleness waiting to happen sort of thing. And, I can't say these things have done much for the format, positively, so glad they're gone.
I would agree. I started getting back into Standard back in M20, so a little bit before you, about 6 months before you. Mm-hmm. And I remember in Eldraine, no one was really paying attention to Fires of Invention because Oko was a thing, and briefly before that, Golos and Field of the Dead was the thing.
Right, they had bigger problems.
Exactly, but then once that was gone, Fires was this deck that kind of always existed and was always in the top tiers, but I don't think it never had the spotlight until kind of that Theros Beyond Death, like you were saying, where it just became it was always in and out of the de facto best deck.
That's the thing about it, right? So when it was tested, it was tested against other Eldraine cards and, some of the cards that are going to come out, and when they're evaluating the ability of this card against the threats of only Eldraine as, things you can pull out with the... what's the exact text again? It's, play 2 cards equal to the number of lands you control.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
so knowing what cards you can play in Eldraine, they were able to play it effectively, not necessarily fairly, but at least as a powerful card that isn't too overpowered. But as more and more sets come out, I think this was also in Wizards' official reason for the banning. But there's more and more threats that they didn't fully realize would be a problem when combined with fires, and it just becomes another issue with this fast mana pace that we've been on recently. And when you keep adding these things that fires can play effectively before anyone else, it's doomed for disaster.
Yeah, that has been a common thread in terms of what's been plaguing Standard recently is this just ridiculous production of mana. And I think Fires was definitely the most egregious culprit. So I'm happy it's gone. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the other big mana strategies, because there are several cards that weren't addressed in this banned format. But before we talk about that, allow me to go off on Agent of Treachery for a second. This card, all right, so Chev, as someone who is in our playgroup and as someone who is in our Commander playgroup, knows that I love to play big mana control. I'm talking Esper, I'm talking Bant, I'm talking Grixis. I'll play it all, but if we're playing Draw Go and then we're dropping big haymakers. So Agent of Treachery, when I originally saw it, I was like, this card is sweet. This is exactly what I want. And somehow Standard has just completely ruined it for me. I never want to see this card again, and I'm so happy that it's gone.
Well, it's the kind of thing.
My biggest problem
stealing cards is just like it's great for you, but it sucks for everyone else.
Yes, it never feels good to have your cards stolen. And we've had different times where within our playgroup things like blatant thievery, which steals a permanent from each opponent, has been played. That never feels good. Nope. And I mean, this is the same thing. My biggest problem with Agent of Treachery is that there's a crucial word missing from the card, and that is non-land. So the problem for me is, and especially Fires just exacerbates this, but when you can ramp out an Agent of Treachery on turn 4 or 5 or whatever, and then I might have a threat out and you might take that threat, and that doesn't feel great. But the worst part is when you just start taking lands.
Yeah.
There have been games when I've played against Agent of Treachery, and due to them playing multiple agents or having various ways to Thassa is a big combo with that. And all of a sudden I go from having 8 lands in the late game to eventually conceding with 4 lands. That's just a problem, and I don't think that's something that should be in a standard
because
format.
It's not only
so
fast
I'm
mana,
glad it's
but
gone.
It's also taking the mana away from you, so it's like doubly as effective.
Right. And plus, in like a sick way, like you're ramping yourself now because I am losing that land and you're now gaining that land too, which helps with Fires too, because you can just play it for free now. So anyway, I will get off my soapbox. I'm glad that Agent is banned, and I'm glad that Fires is banned. So good on you, Wizards. I think you could have hit a few more things, but this is a step in the right direction. I'm still looking at Teferi. That card needs to go. And I don't know how I feel about this core set with more Teferis, but
that's going to be interesting.
Spoilers start pretty soon, so.
Right. Hopefully we hear what the Teferis are going to be first, so we have the most times to come to term and complain about it. But luckily, with rotation, old Teferi or 3 Teferi will be out in the fall. So, I mean,
the fall will definitely help.
Get rid of a lot of stuff.
So, anyway, let's talk about our other big change here, and that is the companion mechanic, which is just fresh off Ikoria, has been officially changed. So I have the official announcement in front of me, and it says, once per game, anytime you could cast a sorcery, which means it's during your main phase and there's nothing on the stack, you can pay 3 generic mana to put your companion from your sideboard into your hand. This is a special action, not an activated ability. So that's important just because it means can't be countered or responded to.
Right, just like Morph.
Right, exactly. So this is a big change because before, obviously, you could just play it from your sideboard whenever, which takes away a lot of the ability to interact with it and plan for it. So how do you feel about this, Chev? This is a big change, obviously. Wizards does not do rules changes I think the last rules change we saw was when they changed the legend rule, which was multiple years ago.
No, the last one was when they did the Planeswalker stuff. When they changed the text of over 700 cards from the any target to the whole. Remember that whole like redirect to Planeswalker thing?
Oh, true. Yes,
that was
true.
a huge one.
But that
it was more.
Yeah,
it made sense.
that was
though, right?
big.
Yeah, because like it's kind of understandable where all that was going. Where this is more confusing, particularly
right. It was more of a convenience thing where this is a bona fide rules change.
Yeah, I think some of
But
this
anyway,
definitely. I mean, nothing can really benefit from the pandemic, but I believe maybe they were more ready to change the actual wording on the cards since no one is really playing in paper right now. Since they can really just change the card itself online, and that's going to be 99% of play, and we're going to be good. And then, when Ikoria gets reprinted, they can have the new text on there. So I think, with this digital age, it allows them to be a little more free with how they wanted to change it as opposed to outright banning the mechanic, which I think, this toned down version of it definitely still has some ability to be powerful. We don't know yet how powerful because it's really like we're going to see now how many of these decks relied on these cards for their strategy and how many just found them really good to have access to. Um, and so some of them, like while it was kind of helpful to have, it didn't really make the deck. The deck would be played differently, really, if the companion wasn't there. Something like I'm thinking of the red-black Obosh aggro deck, where it can pretty much function well on its own without Obosh. Obosh just really helps, sort of thing.
right.
But I definitely think I think decks like the Lurrus deck is certainly going to be played less when you have other options of cat oven sort of like structures to build around. You don't necessarily want to have to spend 6 mana on Lurrus when everything is going to be so cheap anyway. As for Yorion, maybe we'll finally see. Well, no, that's right, because with Fire's gone, we won't be seeing a 60 card Fires deck anytime soon. So yeah, I think this is like one of the biggest shakeups that could happen, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. I'm not really sure.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, finish your thought because then I've got a whole other tangent I want to go down.
So I'm not really sure, what's going to be kind of left when the dust settles that's unaffected, or how many decks are really going to be thinking, do I need that companion, or is it really worth that extra 3 mana I have to play to put it into my hand? I mean, we're not playing a lot of cards that take stuff out of hands right now, but obviously that could change if that turns out to be a particular thing, if people are still really pushing companions after this, which I don't think they will be.
Right. Okay. So I think you made a lot of good points. I think the first thing I want to address is we've established that this new rule change is a good rule change, but do you think it would have been better for them to just start banning things, or do you think that this errata is a more positive direction than starting to ban things?
I would say that this errata is a better step than just banning things, and that's because at their core, these companions are a really cool idea to build your deck in a particular way and then benefit from the strategy of doing that. And I think the main issue was it was so easy to throw in these companions and play them whenever that they became super powered. But by making it more of a cost of entry to get these companions onto the battlefield, like you really have to want them. And so now you have to make the deck building decision like, does my deck really benefit from having this extra ability, and how can my deck really warp to that idea? So I think what we're going to see is maybe something more pure or related to what Wizards might have been originally going for, where we have these decks that come up without companions. They're what we're expecting in Magic now. But then we have some more fringe decks or some that are more focused around the individual ability of their commander, to the point where it's like, this strategy really wouldn't work if we didn't have access to this commander. Or companion. You can see
companion.
Where my mind is.
Well,
yeah.
I think you're right though, because I think they do kind of function. I think they originally were kind of supposed to function like a commander of sorts, right? And
exactly.
this, I think this kind of pushes them even more in that direction.
The companion tax.
Now, yeah, the companion tax, right? There's an analog, and then also, like you were saying, you really need to want it now. I think the biggest problem was that, like you're saying, it's just such a free roll to put all these cards, and most of them are powerful to, broken enough to start getting banned
Right.
Luris. And also Zerda. Much love for Zerda. Check out the Zerda video. But yeah, now you really need to want it. So they are almost like little commanders. All right. Well, I was thinking we could go through all 10 companions. There's only 10 of them, right? So let's talk about each one a little bit and just see what's actually going to be playable. And we can discuss all formats. I'm going to be looking at it mostly from a standard lens, but we can talk about Brawl as well and also maybe some older formats. So let me real quick, just pull up a list of all the companions and let's kind of discuss what their role going forward is now.
Yeah, I had to refresh myself on what these are too.
Quick plug: we're not sponsored, but Scryfall, if you do want to sponsor us, we'd love that. Scryfall is an excellent searching tool. All right, so let's just go alphabetical. I've got the list here.
Okay.
The first one I'm looking at is Gyruda, Doom of Depths, the Demon Kraken, the all evens. Trev, how do you feel about this card?
Overall, I gotta say, when I'm locked against Garuda, Spark Double, Garuda, I'm not the biggest fan, but I definitely think of the threats that were out there prior to this companion rule change, it wasn't the most annoying, I would say. Like, if they can get the 6 mana going and play their first Garuda, it definitely, like, got started and was difficult to deal with if they hit all of their, I don't know what you want to call it, mills. I didn't think you could ever hit a mill.
Right,
but
right.
Right,
they're
yeah, they
twos
hit
and
all
fours
of those
drops,
and then they're able to keep going. What I see is, I think the fundamental aspect of the deck won't change. I think people will still try to play it because it's really once Garuda gets out there, then everything else goes to hell. So it's really like this just puts them back a turn when it comes down to it. You're putting it into the hand, and unless the other guy has any other interaction, yes, it kind of forecasts that they're going to play Garuda soon. But at the end of the day, it's really just pushing it a turn back. And if they're playing blue-black correctly, they're going to have a few counterspells to, make sure Garuda can enter the battlefield cleanly the following turn.
Right, I would agree. I think Garuda is actually one of the biggest winners, or not necessarily winners, but one of the decks that is the most unchanged.
Yeah, I would agree.
Relative to the rest of them, because Garuda is at its core, it's just a combo deck, really. Mm-hmm. So and also they're not playing anything on turn 3. So if on turn 3 they just spend their 3 mana,
yeah, exactly,
and they put Garuda in their hand,
it's just gonna hang out.
It's fine.
Yeah. Doesn't make much.
Yeah. Plus, this is a deck. This is a deck where they're playing another 3 in the main deck, so they have more consistency than these other decks. So I think Garuda, much to my chagrin, because I do not like playing against the deck.
Yeah.
I think that is going to stick around and be a deck.
Yeah, it might be a bigger threat now that most of the competition has been taken out.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people might turn to it, especially since it is so good in best of 1, as opposed to best of 3. So, you won't have time to really. You don't have time to side for it,
yeah.
So, all right. So Garuda probably will end up seeing a little bit more play. Probably not that affected. Maybe is like a turn slower, but not terrible. All right, next is Gigantha the Wellspring, which is the one that taps for Wooburg.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I've ever seen this played, at least not against me.
No, I haven't seen it in standard either. The most place that I've seen Gigantha is in what's the king from Eldraine? Kenrith. In Kenrith Brawl decks.
Kenrith?
Yeah. As just kind of another extra card to have.
Is it played as a companion?
Yes,
it's
played as a companion in the Kenrith Brawl deck, where, as an aside, you probably won't see any difference, because when you have access to green in a format like Brawl, just like Commander, things get out of hand relatively quickly. So again, like, especially with Kenrith costing 5, you don't have much to do turn 3, or you're playing a mana dork. So you're going to be able to get the 3 mana and Gigantha into your hand relatively easily. And generally there are bigger threats to deal with than a giant mana dork. So as far as Brawl goes, I definitely don't see any change in Gigantha's play, and this companion rule change certainly doesn't make Gigantha more likely to see play in Standard.
Agreed. The only time I've heard of Gigantha being played was I heard that it was being played in Modern a little bit, in like Zoo decks and Humans decks.
Interesting.
I think that's impossible now.
Yeah,
those decks want to go so fast. Yeah, so they want to go so fast that I don't think it's possible. So I don't think Gigantha will be seeing that much play. Not that it was seeing that much play anyway. The next one we're looking at is Kahira the Orphan Guard, aka the one with the cutest art because it's got all those little babies on there. Yep. So this is the one that cares about your creatures being cats, elementals, nightmares, dinosaurs, or beasts, aka the main clades on Ikoria. Once again, not a card that I've seen that often.
No.
I see the occasional. Just the other day I did play against a pretty reasonable cat tribal deck in standard.
Really?
But
wow.
Other than that, yeah. I mean, I also was playing a slow deck, so it didn't help that I was just getting beat down by. There's like the 1/1 cat that has lifelink, and then when it comes in, it buffs all the other ones that are like that. And then into a Johnny's Pride Mate, into Kahira.
Yeah, that's a difficult.
It's rough. But anyway, yeah, Kahira. I don't know. I think once again, I think this is just not good news because every deck Kahira wants to be in, they want to be curving out, they want to be aggressive, and I think having to pay that 3 for your Lord is just no good.
Yeah.
Have you seen Kahira anywhere?
Again, I've seen it mostly with Bracco's Sprawl decks, particularly so Bracco's has that can be played from the graveyard and is always like mutating onto something. It's not as big of a interaction as it would be in Commander when you have Commander damage, but in Brawl it still sees a fair amount of play with Kahira as a companion. I don't see much of that changing because again, it's kind of just like a free card, so to speak. So whether or not you end up playing it in a game, if all the creatures in your deck are mutate, which means they're probably one of the types of Ikoria, cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast, then you're not going to see much difference in terms of its play in that format. But yeah, it's certainly not helping it in Brawl any.
Right. Let's talk about the next one, Karuga and the Macro Sage, the dinosaur hippo that cares about things 3 or more.
Right. I gotta be
honest.
This
one I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the only times I saw this were in fire decks, and that was like really right at the beginning of the Ikoria standard, and I haven't seen it played much anywhere else.
I would agree. Yeah, I still see it occasionally in fires decks, but it definitely was a fad more when Ikoria had just come out. But like you're saying, I think this deck, I don't think Karuga sees any play.
No.
With this change and also fires being banned. I don't think it's going to see any play at all.
No, there's no standard deck you want where the rest of your deck has nothing below 3 mana. You've just like wasted 3 turns, and now you're not casting fires on turn 4 to get you back all that time you've missed, and you're sitting with a fat dinosaur hippo in the companion zone or whatever. I don't think there's any reason to play this card.
Now, because of the pandemic and everything, we have not played Commander as a playgroup in a while, but I think that Karuga is actually very strong in Commander.
Really?
I think so, yes, because you want to play a lot of big things, so you're going to have a lot of things that are 3 or more, and it's a reasonable sized body that draws a bunch of cards in Simic, which is arguably the best color combination and the best at ramping and playing big things in Commander.
I would say I think that it has the potential, but I feel like when you take out a lot of those lower cost ramp spells and all of your mana dorks and all of your low cost counter spells, like you're really losing a ton of stuff that you don't even think about are lower than 3 mana. And so I feel like it would be interesting. That's a build I'd really like to see. Like, can the fact that you have access to this one extra card that's going to cost you a total of 8 mana to draw a card for each other permanent you control with converted mana cost 3 or greater, if that makes up for losing access to all mana dorks, 2 mana counter spells, 2 mana rocks, and everything else that you take for granted, even in Simic.
Okay, you know what? You might have got me. I was not. When you said it costs an 8 mana total, I was like, oh yeah, that's.
Granted, you can pay in installments, but it's still like we're playing Commander here,
right?
So you have access to better draw spells. I think at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. I think if you played it in the 99, it would be strong. Let me revise my statement. I think in the 99 it would be strong. So I think it will see play. I don't know if it'll see play as a companion.
Yeah. Like, what about that Garrick modal spell from Eldraine? First mode is all non-humans get +3/+3, and then the other mode is draw a card for each non-human creature you control.
Draw a card for the greatest power amongst non-human creatures you control.
Tall as opposed to wide. I was getting confused.
Yeah, that is just a better card. But it is modal. It is modal. So that gives it an edge. But I know what you mean. Yeah, let me revise my statement. I think Garuga would be strong in decks in the 99.
Yeah. As long as you're thinking about it like a 5-mana draw spell, I think you're right. I think that could be very powerful if you have a board state full of large creatures. I guess for me, I'm trying to think of times our play group has ended up with large board states of creatures. Now, granted, maybe we don't have a lot of creature-themed decks, but I don't know. I feel like we've been lacking a bit besides, a battle cruiser here and there when it comes to board states recently.
Maybe. Well, remember, Karug cares about permanence, so it's not necessarily creatures.
Right. Of course, yeah. I've got my head
wrapped
around creatures.
Now that you're saying it, it is... There are so many board states that are seem wide because they have just a bunch of, like, dorks, or, like, if you're paying a Patra, your 10 snakes don't count for this.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, okay, fair enough. Anyway... Let's move on. We've talked enough about Karuga for the fact that it's probably not going to see any more play. All right, the elephant in the room, or aka the
cat
nightmare cat in the room. Yes, Lurrus of the Dream Den. Already banned in Vintage and Legacy, so we're not going to talk about that. Not that the other ones have really been seeing. Actually, Garuda has seen a little bit of play in Legacy, for the record. But so not going to talk about that. I think, honestly, for Modern and Standard, I think Lurrus is... I think it'll still get played because it's essentially a free roll, but it has nowhere near the dominance that it wanted. All the Lurrus decks were really trying to be super low to the ground, super fast. There's been a mono black and also a mono white Lurrus deck that I've seen a lot in the queues recently, and those decks really rely on Lurrus, especially the mono black one, because there's a lot of like sacrificing and then just bringing stuff back immediately. Yeah. And not being able to play Lurrus right on turn 3 or turn 4 is going to be, I don't want to say a death knell, but I think those decks are going to really fall to tier 2 or maybe lower.
I think...
And I think same thing in Modern.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely like harder on Lurrus at the beginning of this. I feel like it has the chance to still be pretty powerful, but I think it's going to rely a lot more heavily on what you draw. Like, I think, again, this whole mechanic change is focusing on making companions less consistent in the games that you're sort of up against. And I feel like, that really does this because unless you have a strong enough board state that you can basically sit around for turn 3 to get Lurrus into your hand to prepare for turn 4, which a lot of the time you don't want to be doing that early. I think it'll definitely be interesting to see where they lie versus, again, the dominance they've seen. I think it could come back up to the same level of dominance depending on how the meta sort of shifts and adjusts to the fact that really no one can be playing companions the same way anymore that they were used to besides Garuda, really.
Right. I actually just had this thought, though. I do think Lurrus would be interesting as a companion, like just a one of in like some variation of an Esper or blue-white or blue-black control deck. Because if you're playing a lot of like instants and sorceries, right, and then late in the game you can play Lurrus, bring back something like a Glass Casket or a Birth of Meletus or a Deadweight. I think that would be interesting. That might actually, I might pursue that. We'll see. That could be interesting. I really want control to be good again. It's just, but there's, well, we're trending maybe, but anyway, yeah, I think that could be good. I think Lurrus definitely still sees play. I think it'll probably see the most play.
Oh, for sure. It's still the most
other than maybe one more that we'll get to later. But I think that a lot of these dedicated Lurrus decks, like the aggro decks, I think they take a big hit.
Yeah. They'll definitely need to reevaluate.
Let's go to the next one. Lutri the Spell Chaser? Is it Elemental Otter? Insta-banned already in Commander, so we're not talking about that.
I haven't seen this guy since those Insta-bans.
Was it banned in Brawl as well?
It's banned in Brawl.
I really... I don't know. I that's something for another day, but I don't think I agree with that. I don't think this card is powerful enough to justify banning it like that.
It's not a power level thing. It's just a 61st card. So it's just the fact that there's no deck that can't add this, really. I mean, color identity. But there's no red-blue deck that can't benefit from having just an extra free card. So it's more about, the philosophy behind the games of Brawl and Commander as opposed to actual power of the Spell Chaser. It's just access to another effect.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But yeah, I have not seen this card in Standard. I have not heard of this card anywhere except for, surprisingly, in Vintage. Because I think copying like a Time Walk or an Ancestral Recall would be pretty good. And also they play so many like one-ofs because they have the restricted list.
Right.
That but I think now having to pay an extra 3 for this in a format like Vintage, no way. Nope. There's no way that this card sees any play other than in
it's such a
casual
weird
sort of
card.
decks.
Like I'm assuming this was meant for a draft environment that, I mean, when I've drafted, I've still never seen it come up. But I can't think of another format that benefits from needing to have every card in your deck be a different name. Like, that's not consistent for any of the formats that require it. And then the formats that are built for that, Commander and Brawl, it's banned in. So I don't know where Lutri is supposed to be calling home.
I think it's partly just something interesting to do if you're one of those sort of brewers, but I think a lot of it is in draft. I have seen it, I think, twice in draft.
Okay.
And it's been pretty. I mean, it's pretty strong when you can, on turn 5 play Fire Prophecy, copy Fire Prophecy, or God forbid you get to turn 7 and you can Blood Curdle, copy Blood Curdle. That's very strong.
Yeah.
I have had actually the Fire Prophecy one did happen to me. But they were playing Grixis, so luckily they played a Blood Curdle later, but they didn't get to copy it. But yeah, I think draft is where Lutri is going to live for perpetuity. Okay. Next, we're talking about Obosh the Prey Piercer. So all odds, double your damage. Now, I think that this guy is going to be potentially the most played alongside Luris.
Really?
Because the mono red deck that you were talking about earlier, and I have seen Rakdos versions of it too, mostly the mono red deck, that has been playing this, I think is quite strong, in that I've lost to it many times. And they are going so low anyway, they play so many 1-drops, that I think them taking their turn 3 or turn 4, play a 1-drop and also tap 3 to get their Obosh, I think is still going to be worth it for them, because basically once they play Obosh, if you can't instant speed interact with Obosh, you pretty much lose the game. Because if they're playing correctly, at that point they have a board of multiple things. They've already done a significant amount of damage to you, and they're about to swing in and either clear your board or kill you. So I think Obosh doesn't really lose much from this ban. Because once mono red has enough time and mana to pay for 3 to get Obosh in, they have enough to pay for Obosh, and that's, like I said, that's basically it for you. So I think
I don't know. I'm interested to see if that's what happens, but I feel like a lot of these decks were kind of changed from the Ember Cleave mono red decks that we saw prior to Ikoria to fit Obosh because of the ability is so powerful. But I feel like some of those are going to be going back to the Ember Cleave sort of strategies we know, because now that it costs an additional 3, like if I'm a mono red player, I'm trying to murder you as fast as possible without worrying about any sort of, on turn 4 only playing 1-drop and then holding. Like at that point, I could have a state big enough to drop my Ember Cleave, as opposed to taking a turn to put Obosh into my hand to play next turn. And so I feel like, there's a chance that Obosh comes in with a similar level of power, but I feel like the restriction now on him is large enough that it makes the cards that were sacrificed to include Obosh um, more beneficial to have in your deck. Particularly Embercleave. Really just talking about Embercleave.
Yeah, Embercleave is extremely strong. I do think it's going to be a huge. I mean, it's already been a player in the format for a while, and I think it's going to be even bigger player in the format now that things like fires have gone. Um, I think that's a good point. And my original favorite pseudo damage doubler Torbrand is not allowed to be played.
Yeah, exactly.
Is not
there's another one.
Yeah, so I think I'm hoping. I personally hope Torbrand decks make a comeback just because I played a Torbrand deck for a long time, and I really like that deck. So I would love for that to come back.
Yeah, try it out. What is it, June 4th when these changes go into play? So whip out Torbrand and see what Brave New World he's facing.
Yes, I think I was I was telling you earlier that I logged onto Arena and I was like, all right, good, no fires, like no agent, we're good to go. And then I just faced like 3 decks that had Luris as their companion. I faced 2 fires decks and I actually got Winoded with Agent of Treachery.
Yep.
And I was like, oh yes, we still need to wait for these changes to go into effect.
These next couple days are going to be brutal as everyone tries to get the last plays out of these decks.
Yeah, I mean, well, whatever. Let them have it. As long as things are changing for the better, I'm good for it.
Fair.
All right, we have 3 more companions I want to talk about. Let's bang these out real quick and then get on to our next little topic. Umori the Collector. Essentially, make all your creatures cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
This card already hasn't seen a lot of play. It's just too fair.
Yeah.
It's just a beatdown card. And I think that adding that 3 mana, you just want to curve out. This is no good for
right. Yeah, and it's definitely seen some play in Brawl that I've seen. But when you're now addressing it as a 7 mana cost negator by 1, and you're thinking about all that mana you could have just cast on your creatures. Like, I know it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but like if I'm looking at 7 mana that could have gone towards 7 creatures 1 mana reduction, like I kind of feel like at what point, yeah, maybe it just hangs out in the command or the companion zone for a rainy day, but 9 times out of 10 you're not going to end up playing Umori in comparison to any of these other cards that you could.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just I don't know. I guess like you were saying, you could just leave it in the command zone, and I do think that a lot of people, at least at first, are still going to play
the same exact decks
companions
and just see how often they're playing their commanders.
Right, or just slightly tweak their decks and keep a companion in the, because I mean you're only giving up 1 sideboard slot, and plus so many people on Arena
are doing
play best of one. Yeah, so it is sort of free. So I think a lot of people will try and keep these, but I think the amount of times that they actually play their companion, or the amount of times it's correct to pay that 3 mana and then play their companion, I think is going to go down drastically.
Exactly.
All right. Another scourge on the format, Yorion the Sky Nomad, most infamous for its interaction with fires, which is now gone, in various versions of the Jeskai deck, Jeskai Luka, which had obscene win rates. That's part of the reason that fires got banned. It was having 60% win rates, which is just not acceptable if you want a diverse format. I think once again Yorion is one of those companions that's going to stick around as like a one of in the companion slot in the sideboard, whatever you want to call it, because it has a track record of being powerful in control decks,
right?
And control decks are, they want to go long anyway, so they're going to have 3 mana lying around at some point. And then when you get the chance to flicker, Banishing Lights and Elspeth Conquers Deaths and Teferi Time Ravelers and Narset, 3 mana Narsets. I have had the chance to do that a few times, and it feels very good and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
So I think Yorion's going to stick around. It's not going to have its dominance.
Right.
Like
it doesn't have its best buddies anymore, but that's okay. Yorion will survive without them. Right.
Exactly. Yorion plus fires is just disgusting. So, well, I think Yorion is going to be not super hit regarding that. All right, last one, Zerda, the Dawnwaker, has a special place in my heart. Um, unfortunately, wasn't really seeing play other than in Legacy, where it already got banned. And I think the only person playing it in Standard was me. Once again, shout out. Watch the video. But that deck now dies with this rule change because
Yeah.
we just we were dirtling too much anyway. We can't afford that extra 3 mana. Chev, any thoughts on
No,
Zerda?
you're definitely the Zerda master at this point. I don't really see how Zerda. I didn't see Zerda before, and from what I know about the infinite mana strategy employed by Zerda, it really can't survive in this new world.
No, unfortunately, that is one casualty. That really hurts though, because I do like Zerda.
You should give it a whirl
I
just
wish
once, just see what happens.
I do plan on still casually playing that Zerda deck
Mm-hmm.
because trying to think, does it rotate in the fall?
Yeah, it would rotate the fall after this one. Oh, are you talking about cards in the deck?
Um, we would lose a couple cards actually, so it could still work. Oh wait, no, it wouldn't work because Gauntlets of Light, if you haven't seen it, is one of the combo pieces. Gauntlets rotates, so yeah, so Zerda would die anyway. But I do plan to casually play a little bit
Mm-hmm.
over the next couple months. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be too hot. I will not be playing in the ranked keys if that's what you were wondering. So all right, so I think we've
Pretty much
covered all the
covered it,
companions
yeah.
pretty extensively. Yeah, this is definitely a big hit for them playability wise, but I think it was a correct move
Mm-hmm.
in that these things really needed to be nerfed a little bit.
Right.
So, let's talk about going forward. Let's talk about going forward and wrap this thing up. What do you think we're going to start seeing in terms of the metagame going forward? What's gonna come out? Are we going to have new decks? Are we going to have old decks come back? What do you think is going to happen, Jeff?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting shift for everybody. There's going to be the first couple of weeks, like you said, are going to be everyone kind of playing their old decks besides Fires and kind of like timidly seeing how well that companion actually works in that role. Like, okay, are you still as useful to me as you were before the ban? Obviously, the answer is going to be no, but how much is the strategy affected? And I think like we're going to see a sort of slowness to Standard for a little bit to adapt to these changes because again, this isn't like our normal change to Standard where a card is banned and then so one deck is just out and needs to be kind of adjusted or completely forgotten, but the rest of the format stays the same. This is like companions are in every deck, and so every deck is affected by this. And so I think it's going to be longer before people realize, are they working? Are they not working? And when that happens, I definitely think we're going to start to see a lean towards previous strategies. I think Mono Red, Embercleave, and Torbrand is going to come back in force because that's a known deck that people are comfortable playing and is super powerful and low to the ground. And I think that's going to be the first sort of thing out of the gates in this less companion-y metagame. But after that, I think we might see. Yeah, I'm expecting to see a lot more Euro and Torbrand. I think at the end of the day, but I do think it'll be an interesting thing to see if there are more Ikoria cards that will see a moment in the spotlight, or when M21 releases soon. Like if there's going to be new strategies in there, because again, we're looking at 200 new cards in a couple weeks.
That's true. There is, there it will be interesting to. I think by the time M20 comes out, everyone will just as sort of figured out their new ratings on the format,
Right.
and then that will shake everything up.
Perfect.
I agree with you. I think aggro in a lot of forms is going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
I think mono red is going to be big. Um, I I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of this mono white deck, and I think it's going to come back. And then also, you can't underestimate Gruul. Questing Beast is just.
Jesus, I forgot about questing.
I am not a fan of Questing Beast, but it's just you can't argue with the fact that it is an extremely good card.
Yep.
And basically, any deck that plays, 4 of such and such Mana Dork, 4 Questing Beast, and 4 Embercleave is gonna be powerful.
Yep.
So I think that's gonna come around. I also think that this gives Teamer Reclamation a chance to come back. It was already a deck that was kind of lurking.
It's gonna live out its
But
glory days.
Exactly, yeah. Um, but I think it was a deck that its only real big competitor was at first Blue White Control, and then Fires, which Blue White Control / Fires kind of morphed into Jeskai Luca.
Right.
So I think now that that deck doesn't really exist, I think Blue White or Jeskai Control will be a deck. I don't think it's going to be extremely strong. I think Wilderness Reclamation will be better than it, which I would like Blue White Control to be strong just because I like playing that deck. But I think Wilderness Reclamation is going to come back and people are going to remember what a powerful force in the format it was. And then also, like you were saying, I think Uro, namely ramp strategies, are going to be big again.
Yeah.
So
because we haven't seen any change on those fast mana cards from Theros Beyond Death, or even I think that card's from Allegiance, the Utopia Sprawl, and all those sort of faster mana strategies besides Fires of Invention are going to see more play now.
Yeah, I think people forgot how powerful the Simic and Bant ramp with Uros, Growth Spirals, Cavalier of Thorns. I think those decks are going to come back and stomp some people because they just forgot how powerful they were. Yeah, they used to play Agent of Treachery and they don't have that anymore, but there's still plenty of things that you can do. Name, like the Big Pig, the End-Raise Forerunners. I think that's gonna hit a lot of people pretty hard. So
I think personally, I might try a mono red deck for a little bit and try and take advantage of if the format does take a bit of a slow turn while people are timidly trying out strategies with their commanders with their companions without their companions and seeing if their same decks can sort of work. I want to take advantage of that and be as aggressive as possible in these next few weeks. I think it's a perfect opportunity to brush off your Ember Cleaves and your Torbrands and just kind of go to town against people who are hoping that their companions still have the same power they once did.
Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of turn 1 Fervent champions, and that's not something that I really like, but I think it is the correct move. I personally will probably be trying to make Blue-White / Jeskai Control great again, and I also want to dust off Jund Food from one last go-around because a lot of that deck is going to be rotating in the fall. And I was toying with a list that had Obosh in it as the companion. Because really the only thing you lose from that deck is Trail of Crumbs, which is powerful, but the rest of the deck is you can tweak it so that it's nice. So I think I might try and bring that back around and see how that does. Because I really liked that deck back in the fall, back when it was tier 1, tier 1.5, before Theros came out.
Right.
All right. Well, I think I've hit all the points that I want to cover. Is there anything that else is weighing on your mind or that you want to bring up, Chev, before we put this case closed?
No, I mean, I think the only other thing to say is spoilers for Core 21 will be starting probably before we try and do another one of these. So I'm really excited to see what this new set will bring, and hopefully less fast mana cards. Hopefully we're seeing a sort of slow down, or maybe it's too soon to see a course correction almost to kind of take Standard back a level. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it has good fun cards, and that'll start on Thursday.
I would agree. I think that I'm hoping that there is some change coming. We definitely know that there are new cards coming out, so hopefully they will impact the format. You can count on us that we will be covering the spoilers, because if there's one thing Chev and I love doing, it's just looking at spoilers. I'll check my phone every half hour and be like, all right, what's new?
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess expect us back next week talking about some of the spoilers that come out, and talking a little bit more about how things are starting to shake out with this big shakeup. So that's been the Brew Crew, and we will sign out. Talk to you later.
See you soon.